If you're in UK fintech and cybersecurity, Southeast Asia presents an opportunity for you. Be ready today for insights and listen out for some valuable tips for accessing new markets in Thailand and the Philippines. And for those on the call today in Thailand and the Philippines, there are opportunities for you to partner with UK tech across a wide range of services and applications. In a moment, I'll hand over to Francesca McKee, Head of Financial Services Asia Pacific at the Department for International Trade. But just a couple of notes to highlight before we begin. First, we would love to hear from you during the event, so please use the question box at the bottom of your screen to type your questions. Francesca will be making sure that they go to the right speaker. And second, I'm glad to say that all slides presented today will be shared after the webinar, together with a point of contact. Oh, and just one other thing. If you're on social media, do tag us. Our Twitter handle is @UK-ASEAN. And now, to moderate today's event, I'm delighted to hand over to Francesca McKee. Francesca, over to you.
Thanks, Ken. Hi, everyone. I hope you can see me and hear me okay. Do shout if not. So as Ken kindly, well, thank you, Ken, and thank you to UK-ASEAN for supporting the event today. We obviously really appreciate the partnership that we have in the region. I'm Francesca McKee with DIT based in Singapore, and I'm moderating the session today focused on Thailand and the Philippines. So I'll quickly set out the agenda just so that everyone's on the same page. We'll start with some opening remarks from our Deputy Trade Commissioner for Southeast Asia, Mr. Sam Myers, and then we'll follow up with a couple of really interesting keynote messages from first the Deputy Governor of the BSP in the Philippines, Ms. Chuchi Fonancier, and also from the President of the Thai Fintech Association, Mr. Chonladet Kemaratana, sorry. We'll then have a panel discussion where we'll be joined by some really innovative fintechs and cybersecurity firms, including Featurespace, Solidatus, and Micro Focus. So I'll head over to Sam, but quickly introduce him. He, as Deputy Trade Commissioner, he is responsible for the trade investment relationship between the UK and ASEAN. He leads a team of 90 staff based out of Singapore and is working to support UK businesses like yourselves. Over to you, Sam.
Thank you, Francesca. Distinguished speakers and guests, good afternoon to those of you joining from Asia here with me, and good morning, everyone dialing in from the UK. I'm really delighted to be opening this session with some very brief remarks for you ahead of really getting into the depths and exploring the opportunities for fintech and cybersecurity in two really dynamic markets, the Thailand and Philippines. Firstly, I'm delighted to welcome and thank Ms. Chuchi Fonancier, Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of the Philippines, and Mr. Chonladet Kemaratana, President of the Thai Fintech Association, as well as all of the renowned and distinguished experts and speakers that we've got lined up for you. Thank you for sharing your insights with us today. And thank you to the UK-ASEAN Business Council for bringing us together and giving us all this opportunity. Now, today's event takes place at a really important time. Notwithstanding the challenges of the last 18 months, UK-ASEAN trade has grown by 70% to over £40 billion in the last decade. The UK very recently became a dialogue partner for ASEAN. We were the first country in 25 years to become a dialogue partner. And that gives us an opportunity to demonstrate and deepen our engagement across a range of areas, including trade and investment. And within that, there's perhaps no more important area of partnership than on digital and tech. And we've already got a number of successes and partnerships. Most recently, the launch of the ASEAN UK Digital Innovation Partnership, which took place earlier this month. And we've got a really strong programme of programmes, events and opportunities for companies and individuals looking to deepen your understanding and your engagement with countries across Southeast Asia. Our event today obviously takes place against that COVID-19 backdrop, and as such is a virtual one. And I do not wish by at all to undermine or diminish the horrible impacts of the pandemic on lives and livelihoods. But one thing it has also done is propelled demand for innovative technologies. And many of you will know that we've seen huge increases in growth of digital payments, other technologies. And in parallel with that, sadly, we've seen a growth in fraud, phishing, vishing, and other online threats targeting bank accounts, credit card holders, e-wallet accounts, online shopping, and pretty much any other use of internet and financial services. And so that has, of course, given rise to our need for protection, need to find smart ways to counter that criminality, and to ensure that we maintain, build and grow trust of consumers in online and digital products. So despite that, London Tech Week is always a fascinating week full of events showcasing the boldest, brightest and most innovative technology that the UK has to offer. And today's event will include a small snapshot of such solutions and dynamic, innovative companies. Now, the UK is home to the world-leading expertise in financial technology, and the tech ecosystem has nurtured some of the most innovative cybersecurity solutions to maintaining the integrity of those critical services and ensuring the safety and trust of users online. The UK's proposition for starting and growing your tech company is unique, with world-class talent, some of which you'll see here today, UK-wide expertise, forward-thinking regulation, access to capital, and an innovative financial services sector. And as a result of this environment, it's really put the UK at the cutting edge of some of the fintech innovations you're going to be hearing more about today, from peer-to-peer lending, challenger banks, cyber, insurtech, redtech, the list goes on. And that's also why the UK is home to about 2,500 fintech companies and over 1,200 cybersecurity solution providers. Now, we're here today to talk about Thailand and the Philippines, and they've also seen extraordinary shifts over the last 5 years in financial service sector growth, cybersecurity demands, and both an increasing volume and complexity of needs in those areas. The panel members in today's discussion really represent some of the UK, Thailand and Philippines' most exceptional solutions and providers. And I'm really pleased that they're here today to join us and share their expertise. I also want to flag the support that the Department for International Trade, UK-ASEAN Business Council and others on the line can provide. If you're new to Thailand and the Philippines, you're new to this region, we have teams on the ground ready to help you. Ken highlighted the work of the Digital Trade Network. I hope you Google to find out a bit more, but that's a network of expert officers based across the Asia-Pacific region, ready to help companies to understand the opportunities and ready to help partner with companies on the ground in the region. You've already heard from Francesca McKee, who is our financial services lead in the Department for International Trade for financial services. And so please do reach out to Francesca or to Richard Colley and Ben Morley, who are the country directors for the Philippines and Thailand, respectively. And they'll also be joining today's discussion. So please do reach out to us after this event. We're here to help create some platforms for thinking, sharing expertise, insights, and exploring the opportunities. But I do know, as great as our speakers are, we won't be able to do all of that in the time we've got available today. So thoroughly encourage you to not only enjoy the session, but think throughout what are some of the areas you want to follow up on, and you've got those people on the call, and we all stand ready to help you make a success in this really dynamic and thriving region, and with two markets, Thailand and the Philippines, that we'll be hearing much more about but are full of opportunities and promise. So thank you very much. And Francesca, back to you.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, echoing kind of your recommendations there, like please do reach out to us, and I'll put my email address in the chat or connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm really happy to link you up with colleagues around the region as necessary. So moving on to our couple of keynotes, I'm really delighted to invite the Deputy Governor of the BSP, Banco Central Filipinas, Ms. Chuchi Financier. As Deputy Governor, she heads up the financial supervision sector, which is responsible for the regulation of banks, regulated financial institutions, and also the oversight of payment systems. Over to you, Deputy Governor.
Yeah, thank you, Francesca. So good morning and good afternoon to all the participants of this year's London Tech Event Week, centering on fintech and cybersecurity opportunities in Southeast Asia, organized by the Department for International Trade. And it is my great pleasure to speak before you to discuss the enabling regulations of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, the BSP, this is the Central Bank of the Philippines, towards digital transformation of the financial system. Moving on to the next slide. The renewed focus on digitalization is supported by developments in the Philippine digital payments landscape, which show the untapped market potential and opportunity to promote greater financial inclusion. The 2019 update and 2020 preview on Philippine digital payments conducted by the Better Than Cash Alliance, or the BTCA, in partnership with the BSP, showed progressive trends in the adoption of digital payments. In the first half of 2020, 17% of the total volume of payments in the country were made digitally. At the height of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, there was also a dramatic 87% increase in the use of electronic payment systems in the Philippines. Consistent with the previous diagnostic studies, the government continues to lead the way in digitization with some 87% or 319 billion pesos equivalent of payments by the government, or a G2X, already in digital form. It is also worthy to note that the volume of digital merchant payments significantly grew by 66% from 2018. And this increase largely contributed to the strong upward trend in the overall volume of merchant payments driven by electronic fund transfers and the heightened usage of prepaid cards. Relatedly, the number of Filipinos who own debit and prepaid cards also increased to 23 million from 21 million in 2018, signifying the steady increase in the adoption of payment cards and mobile money. Meanwhile, in terms of account ownership, 29% of adults own an account, and the remaining 71% continues to provide an opportunity for financial institutions to tap. Also, while 70% of Filipino adults own a mobile phone, only a small share use their phones or the internet for financial transactions. So the BSP notes that 7 out of 10 adults who have mobile phones remain unbanked. These indicators serve as windows of opportunity on the use of digital technology. The Philippines, as an archipelago, can greatly benefit from technological innovations that enhance market coverage and expand delivery channels to the unbanked and underserved sectors. Moving on to the next slide, the BSP is cognizant that the expansion of digital financial services can help advance the country's post-pandemic recovery and growth. Consistent with the thrust towards creating an inclusive digital financial ecosystem, the BSP has designed a three-year digital payments transformation roadmap with twin objectives by year 2023. The first goal is to drive the share of country's digital payments to at least 50% of total retail transactions through availability of faster, more affordable, and secure payment options that provide greater convenience And the second goal is to expand financial inclusion with at least 70% of adult Filipinos onboarded to the formal financial system by using payment or transaction accounts. Moving on to the next slide. To deepen the progress, the Bangko Sentral stays committed with its major digital transformation initiatives. And these initiatives act as key enablers to the transformation, which include payment systems initiatives and digital banking. In 2017, the National Retail Payment System, or the NRPS framework, was adopted in the Philippines. Banks and other financial institutions that participate in the network can now perform interbank transfers seamlessly. And this resulted in a game-changing transformation from closed-loop to interoperable payment systems. In hindsight, the NRPS has greatly prepared us for what was to come in 2020. During the pandemic, most BSP-supervised financial institutions, or we call it as BSFIs, were able to immediately provide continued financial services through digital channels via InstaPay and PesoNet. And we expect to have this continuous traction with the increasing volumes of transactions during and post-pandemic. On the other hand, the digital banking framework has been set according to key principles aligned with the overarching mission of the Bangko Sentral towards financial inclusion. Digital platforms play a significant role in steering greater efficiency in the delivery of financial products and services. We see it as an integral building block in promoting and enabling regulatory environment that fosters responsible innovation, promotes cyber resilience, and contributes towards advancing the digitalization of the financial sector. And this also provides the adoption of a digital banking business model that should be underpinned by sound digital governance, robust, secure, and resilient technology infrastructure, and effective data management strategy and practices. And this is balanced with the recognition that digital banks are subjected to the same set of risks and threats. Therefore, the BSP's existing standards on corporate governance, risk management, compliance, internal control and audit, and reporting governance, among others, still apply. And through these major strategic endeavors, the goals of the roadmap are foreseeable and achievable. If I can have to the previous slide, please. And alongside these two key enablers, the Bangko Sentral has driven a number of transformative and pioneering digital financial solutions to achieve economic growth across all sectors of the society, especially the unserved and the underserved segments. And as you may know, we are in the process of revolutionizing government-related undertakings with the launch of the National ID System, the adoption of a QR code standard on a national scale, and the launch of an electronic government, or the e-gov payment facility. The National ID System, also known as PhilSys, is not only meant to simplify the identification and verification process for all citizens, but also enable consumers to have easier access and utilization of innovative digital financial products and services. And this promotes an avenue of convenience, simplicity, security, and integrity for every Filipino to perform relevant public and private transactions. The adoption of a QR, or the Quick Response Code standard, meanwhile, is expected to bring more Filipinos, as well as micro and small enterprises, on board to the financial system, as this will facilitate interoperability and allow merchants and clients to minimize the number of accounts they have to use. When it was launched in late 2019, it demonstrated how secure and easy transfer of funds are by scanning the QR code. And the QR technology is faster and easier to use compared to other financial tools such as debit and credit cards. And for this initiative, we just hit another milestone with the pilot launch of the QRPH, or the person to merchant, or the P2M leg last April 30 of this year. Unlocking this payment stream enables greater financial mobility among the consumers, as they are now capable of using their accounts from the pilot participants to purchase goods at participating merchants. At the same time, this can be an important turning point for MSMEs, since it provides them greater access to digital payment facilities, increasing their customer-centric value and interoperability character. So these developments yet again prove the ease of carrying out retail transactions through digital payments, saving customers and merchants from the hassle of performing multi-step financial transactions. In November 2019, the eGovPay was launched to serve as a payment solution for streamlining and digitization of government collections and disbursements. eGovPay is envisioned to curb government revenue leaks through efficient collection means and enhance transparency. In terms of disbursements, the facility can hasten prompt delivery of social services to concerned stakeholders. All in all, these strategic initiatives are positioned to support the digital payments transformation roadmap, which will consequently lead to moving from a cash-heavy to a cash-light Philippine economy. And this truly portrays the idea that digital payments are the doorkeeper to financial inclusion. On the next slide, in addition, the BSP sees the recently issued Open Finance Framework as another enabler of digital financial inclusiveness. The framework promotes industry competition by empowering consumers to securely share their financial data with third-party financial service providers, which in turn will facilitate the development of more personalized products and services. And this will feature an opt-out mechanism, which will allow consumers to withdraw or limit the scope of data that can be shared in the open finance ecosystem. The framework follows a tiered implementation based on the sensitivity, type, and holder of data. The 5 tiers are product and service information, subscription and new account applications, account information, transactions, and others. And the said tiers, however, may be implemented simultaneously and need not follow this order. So to fulfill the true potential of the open finance ecosystem, the BSP recognizes the need for an implementation body which will drive the development, harmonization, and adoption of standards across the financial industry. And towards this end, the Open Finance Oversight Committee, or the OFOC, is currently being constituted. The OFOC, that's the OFOC, as the standard setting and decision-making body, will have appropriate representation from key players of the financial industry to ensure fair treatment for all participants. Moving on to the next slide, with the implementation of the Open Finance Framework, the BSP looks forward to the emergence of new business models and arrangements that will further push innovation and add value to customers. We are exploring the potential adoption of what we term as a marketplace banking model. The said model will be underpinned by a sound governance and risk management system, including an effective information sharing arrangement to ensure that attendant risks are adequately managed and consumer interests are protected. And moreover, the BSP will formalize its test and learn approach, or what we call popularly as the regulatory sandbox. The BSP has always adopted a balanced approach to innovation, where pioneering technologies can be tested in a live, yet controlled and structured environment, whereby potential benefits and risks are clearly demonstrated. So the key elements of the regulatory sandbox include, among others, the eligibility requirements, oversight framework, and testing parameters. So the BSP is also crafting guidelines which set expectations on the fraud management systems of our supervised financial institutions. As cyber threat attacks continue to rise and evolve, our supervised institutions are expected to adopt more robust systems to protect their infrastructure and proprietary and customer data, as well as to ensure continuous delivery of financial services. Moving on to the next slide, the shift towards digitalization comes with increased risks to financial stability. So illegal activities of fraudsters and scammers have proliferated during the pandemic, allowing them unauthorized access to consumers' financial resources. And to address cybersecurity threats, the BSP has always been proactive in promoting a cyber resilient and secured financial environment. So the cybersecurity and IT risk management regulations have been strengthened to address apparent and foreseeable threats. And the BSP likewise advocates what we term as the zero trust model. And here, BSFIs are expected to subject any access to their digital infrastructures to verification and security screening. So the BSP has also put in place consumer protection mechanisms. And lastly, the BSP has embarked on cybersecurity awareness campaigns to alert the public on emerging cyber threats and scams. And our supervised institutions, meanwhile, were advised to fortify their customer service and redress mechanisms to limit fraud losses. Moving on to the next slide, the foregoing digitalization initiatives likewise complement BSP's efforts in promoting sustainability in the financial sector. So the BSP issued the Sustainable Finance Framework in April of 2020, and the framework underscores the risks posed by climate change and the broader environmental, social, and governance, or the ESG risks to individual banks and to the financial system. But the framework also highlights the opportunities where BSFIs can play a crucial role in mobilizing funds to green or sustainable projects. And digitalization will play a major push on this part. So digital-enabled technologies could be used to design innovative, sustainable finance instruments or financing models for investors that are increasingly becoming climate aware. So digital technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and natural language processing could be utilized to process, generate, and evaluate ESG data. And this will allow investors to make improved decisions by equipping them with better information that will enhance measurement and tracking of the greenness of investments. Indeed, sustainable finance merged with technological innovation or sustainable digital finance will greatly contribute to our goal of low carbon transition and sustainable development. Moving on to the next slide, I wish to also highlight the importance of having a digital literacy campaign, or the DLP. For the BSP, our DLP consists of learning campaigns to make sure that financial consumers know that digital financial services exist, have a basic understanding of how to use them, and can compare the pros and cons of each product type. Also, are aware of potential pitfalls in using DFS, such as phishing, spoofing, personal data theft, hacking, or other cyber risks. And also the third are able to protect themselves from these risks and are observing cyber hygiene practices, such as password or the PIN protection, multi-factor authentication, and account or data privacy. And the fourth is to know their basic consumer rights and what to do in case they have concerns or fall victim to frauds or scams. So the DLP specifically addresses knowledge gaps which hinder the general public from trusting the digital finance ecosystem and from fully and safely utilizing various DFS. So the components of the DLP include the hashtag Safe at Home with e-payments, and also hashtag e-safety is everyone's responsibility campaigns, which promote widespread usage of e-payment solutions such as PesoNet and InstaPay during this pandemic and beyond. And the BSP is now working on additional DLP components to educate consumers about QR page use cases to ensure continuous behavioral shift toward a more digital economy. And moving on to the next slide, with all the pieces of information I have shared, allow me to wrap things up by pulling you back to the why, the rationale behind all these things. So the digital initiatives form part of a bigger picture in line with efforts anchored to the digital payments transformation roadmap. The bigger picture is not so much about being new and different, but rather being more inclusive and empowering for the different members of society. So the digital transformation we are witnessing assures a society where every Filipino is financially literate and included. By forging partnerships with key stakeholders, we have created different financial rails necessary to achieve this goal, from facilitating access to transaction accounts to providing expansive financial services networks and efficient retail payment systems. We remain steadfast in our mission of providing our countrymen with a safe, efficient, and inclusive digital finance ecosystem, and we create a fertile ground to promote sustainable growth of the economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Governor Chichi. Really, really appreciate you talking us through the breadth and depth of areas of focus for you, including, of course, an area that's particularly dear to us in the UK, which is the ESG focus. So I think we can come back to some of the points, and there are quite a few questions in the chat already. But why don't we, in the meantime, kindly hand over to our second keynote speaker. So I'd like to invite our head of the Thai Fintech Association to join us, Kunchonladet. Over to you. Look forward to hearing about Thailand.
Hi, Francesca. It's with the great pleasure for me to be here today. I'm Chonladet, the president of Thai Fintech Association. Today, we're going to talk about the wealth tech industry in Thailand, as well as the digital asset. And then we can discuss about the practicality of eKYC in Thailand. Okay. Due to the time limitation, I would focus on wealth tech, digital asset, and eKYC. But it's worth noting that in Thailand, we have been progressing well in terms of digital payment, the pilot of wholesale CBDC, and next year we're going to have the retail CBDC. And yes, we are doing pretty well after the COVID. I mean, in terms of financial inclusion and digitization. So for my first slide, I would like to start with the number of active traders. For this one, the top line is actually the number of equity traders trading in the stock exchange of Thailand. Before the COVID, we had only 1.2 of total people, I mean the unique investors who successfully opened the account, but only 1.5 years, I mean just July of this year, that 1.2 million of unique investors increased to 2 million of investors. And if we focus on the active investor, we could see that in January of last year, only less than 300,000 of accounts actively trade on a monthly basis. But within this year, this figure increased by double. So we have over 700,000 of investors traded in the market in the May of this year. And if we compare this traditional world of equity with the crypto traders, in Thailand, the crypto market has been jumped, for something like 10-fold or 10 times within a year. So that's why during the same month of May this year, we saw 500,000 of traders trade at least once in our regulated exchanges. So this figure excludes any investors trade directly with foreign exchanges like Binance. Okay, so the first finding of this one is that due to the COVID, there have been so many of newbies coming into the market for trading, and the traditional stock market is being threatened by the surpassing number of crypto traders. Okay, so moving into the next slide, please. The situation in Thailand or the competition is like this. In the wealth tech industry, if we can divide all the players into 3 categories, the first one on your right-hand side, the stockbrokers. There are approximately 33 of brokers in Thailand. They are brokers under Thai banks. They are brokers under foreign financial institutions, or they are online brokers, or they are independent brokers. There are 30 of them. On your left-hand side, I could say that they are the newcomers in order to offer the funds into the market. Okay, for Thais, we have been traded stocks for many decades. We are familiar with buy and sell of single stocks, but for mutual funds, it's kind of new. And for the open architecture or for the selling agent or fund distributor to distribute not only one single asset management company, but also all the asset management companies, it's considered as a new thing here. And there are both startups and incumbents, and they are both local and foreign players. And here we could say that there have been so many collaborations among players. So that's why I put co-opetition, coming from competition and collaboration or coordination, in the way that startup and incumbents, we are coordinating together in order to penetrate into the new market. For example, the banks are coordinating with the startups in order to migrate the current depositors, the current millions of customers, to experience the new gadgets or the new fintech service, such as the algo trading, robo-advisor, so on and so forth. Okay, and on your bottom left, you could see the digital assets exchange and ICO portal. So here, in terms of digital asset exchange, we have been doing pretty well in terms of penetrating into the new market, the younger market, younger investors who might not have experience in investing in the stock market, but they are comfortable to invest in the cryptos and the tokens. So that's why we see a good numbers of exchanges operating under the supervision of SEC. And then we have the ICO portal to do the initial coin offering, again, under the Thai SEC supervision. And this year, this period, we are offering the first asset-backed token in Thailand. So it's more like a real estate investment trust, but we use the tokenization to offer this investment to our public. Okay, in terms of collaboration between UK and Thai or other countries, we have seen a good collaboration, for example, between RoboWealth, the Thai wealth tech player, with Schroders in order to provide the robo-advisor service, as well as among Phenomena, again, the Thai startup, to cooperate with Franklin and Templeton. So going forward, I think in terms of funds, stocks, and especially for the digital assets, that's going to be the collaboration among traditional incumbents, fintech startups, local players, and global players. Okay, so for the next slide, I would focus more on digital assets. And it's my opinion to display the .com bubble alongside .coin bubble. I think everyone here knows that the .com bubble happened in the way that there was a huge overvaluation of internet-based company. I mean, before the year Y2K, before the 2000. And then there was extinction for some people like pets.com, Vetvan, eToys, but there are certain numbers of survivals. So that's why today we have seen Amazon.com, eBay, or Priceline. Okay, so the opportunity for past 2 decades is that it's going to be the internet-based economy with the new technologies and new business models. That's why we have seen the biggest companies to be tech like Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Facebook. So that's what has been happened for 2 decades. From now on, if you ask me what .coin bubble is, I could say that we are living in the overvaluation of most of digital assets. Okay, I don't say all, but most. And for many of digital assets, they have no fundamental property or fundamental value. So that's why I am very sure that there would be extinction for scams or joke coins, any animals coins, okay? And there would be a certain survival which involves the smart contract token or any CBDCs from any central banks, because it would solve not only the cybersecurity problem, but also many aspects of our economy, such as the lower cost to operate. If we use CBDC, our enterprise would experience a more gross profit margin for sure. They don't have to pay the processing payment fees of 2%. Perhaps we don't have to pay credit card company 2%. Okay, so that's why after this, I think the opportunity would be the sustainable fintech-based economy. And fortunately, in Thailand, our regulators are very actively focusing on this. So that's why, again, now we have a good law, good regulations on digital asset for both primary and secondary market. So that's a little thing left to be clear based on the tax aspect, but I think it would be okay. Going back to the previous slide, please. Okay, and we are going to have the retail CBDC or digital baht next year, and that's going to be a huge impact for both digital payment and digital investment. Because in our stock exchange of Thailand, we have done the digital infrastructure project. We are going to use the distributed ledger technology in order to shorten many of the operational issues. And perhaps in the very near future, we are going to disrupt the whole thing of capital markets. So please keep our eyes on that. Okay, I'm going to the next slide, please. In order to present a more practical part of account opening and authentication. So here we have our EDTA, or Electronic Transactions Development Agency, and it has 2 standards. Okay, the first one is about identity assurance level, and the second one is about authenticator assurance level. On your left-hand side, like how would we identify ourselves So we have IAL 2.0 and 3.0, okay, depending on the documents we use. Shortly, for IAL 3.0 means that we need to meet face-to-face, and we need to have ID card alongside with the passport. But if we use IAL 2.0, depending on the requirement of the regulator, we can use our mobile phone, we can use the ID card to do the deep shipping with the dongle, or we can check on the online basis with the government database on the validity of the ID card. And then we can use our human operational team in order to check all the documents, or we can use the biometric to check everything. Okay, so this for IAL. On your right-hand side, on the authenticator assurance level, in order to protect against middleman attack or any other cyber attacks, we have two standards as well. The first one is AAL 2.0 and the second one is AAL 3.0. So here it's like whenever we are using the online platform or online financial services, we need to have the password or PIN code alongside with the two-factor authentications, such as the SMS OTP or token device in order to deliver the OTP, or we can use the biometric. Okay, going to the last slide, please. To provide you guys a more practicality of this AQAC in Thailand, let's imagine that if you would like to open an account with any financial services provider, first and foremost, you need to accept the terms and conditions, and then we need to check the FATCA, and then we need to check the citizen ID. For this citizen ID, it would check the validity and everything in terms of the information in that card. And then we have two choices. Either to go for national identity, it's like to allow the current of the data from the banks to be used to open new account. If we are okay to use that national identity, the identity would go through the system, and we could check on the online basis with the DOPA or government database. We need to do the selfie in order to check our real face with that card, and we need to provide the SMS OTP from our mobile phone. Okay. Alternatively, if we don't go for NDAD, on the bottom part, we have two more choices. The first one is to use the mobile phone with the NFC technology to tap into your passport. Okay, to check if you are really the owner of that one, and to check whether the passport is valid. Alternatively, we can use our ID card to do the deep shipping, or to just insert the card into the ATM machine or into the dongle or kiosk of the telco. So this is how we verify ourselves, and then we can start inputting the personal info, address, and to accept the PDPA. Okay, and then we can link with the bank. So this is how we cope with the EKYC for cybersecurity. And that's all for me to share today related to wealth tech, digital asset, and EKYC. Go back to you.
Thank you, Kanchanlada. I think that was a really helpful overview of, I guess, 3 key pillars that you're focusing on in Thailand. So hopefully if colleagues have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. So that kind of wraps up our keynote section. I'm conscious that we're wrapping up in 40 minutes. So we're going to move into our panel discussion, and I may be a bit ruthless and streamlined in the way that we do this, but I'm really delighted to keep on our keynote speakers and also to invite 3 UK fintech and cyber firms who are really active in the region in Southeast Asia. So I'm delighted to have Solidatus, Micro Focus, and Featurespace. I might kick off by focusing on our kind of fintech, UK fintech and cyber firms. I don't know if Neil, John, and Siobhan, who are kind of our experts who are joining us today, if perhaps you'd like to give a brief introduction about yourself and what you're doing in the region, and then perhaps speak a little bit about what you see as the significant opportunities in Philippines and Thailand, and what in particular attracted you to these markets. So maybe John, Neil, Siobhan.
Sure.
Yeah,
hi.
I'm.
Oh, sorry, Siobhan.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. So I think what has been particularly interesting is that we've seen so Future Spaces fights fraud and financial crime. I think one of the big trends that we've seen in the region has been huge investment into digitization of services and also proliferation of access to internet and to mobile phones. So particularly in Thailand, we're seeing a lot more competition in terms of financial services, for which fraud and financial crime is a key differentiator. And so we've seen a lot of interest in terms of organizations upping their fraud detection, which were projects that had started before the pandemic, but actually since the pandemic has started, that has massively accelerated that investment, just because the change in behavior means that organizations are needing to take very unique approaches to staying one step ahead of fraudsters.
Thanks. John?
So I'm John Bourbon, I'm the APAC head of Solidatus. We are predominantly a visualization and modeling tool, helping organizations to use metadata to understand their data for governance, for transformation, and for reporting purposes. In terms of the opportunities, I think for us, we're seeing a rapid digitalization in these countries, and perhaps I'll be forgiven for saying that perhaps the technology stack in companies in these countries is perhaps not as developed as we see in some other organizations. And I think what that really means is that there's less complexity to navigate, and the ability to rapidly scale, modernize, and deploy new technologies, as we're seeing with the broad digitalization, means that there's less legacy to deal with. So I think, certainly for me, one of the exciting things about both of these countries is the potential that they have with very large local financial institutions that are being encouraged to have better control over their data owing to various local regulations.
Thanks, John.
Hi.
Neil?
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. A big thank you to UK-ASEAN Business Council and to TIT for inviting Microfocus to this panel. A bit about myself: I cover business development for our cybersecurity portfolio across APJ. Microfocus is a pure software company. We've been around for over 40 years. We're the 7th largest. And the key areas that we help customers with is the digital transformation, moving off legacy applications and platforms onto more modern cloud-based hybrid environments. The areas of opportunity that I see in the Philippines and in Thailand fall into 3 categories for myself in terms of what I view. Firstly is on loyalty and payments. And in this area, I think what's interesting is around the consumer identity and access management, and it's an area that we can help customers in as well. And in that particular space, it's looking at the privacy. We know that in the Philippines we have a Data Privacy Act, and in Thailand that's been delayed for 1 year now because of COVID. But addressing the privacy around the CIM data is going to be quite critical. Looking at payments, how can we do secure payments at scale, protecting data downstream as well, and areas of things like data monetization. We feel that there's a big opportunity both in Thailand and in Philippines around data monetization as well. And in this area, what we do is we help customers to protect the data. So if we want to use it downstream, it's perfectly fine to use without compromising any privacy. eKYC has been mentioned several times today already, and this is an area that we integrate with third-party organizations to make sure that identities is secure, and the way it's used by organizations in terms of interpreting the authenticity, that's also protected as well. We also look at providing the capability to build secure fintech platforms, so doing security much more earlier on as you roll out new services in your fintech platforms, embedding security early on, using things like technologies like automation, AI, and machine learning as well, and looking at the end-to-end supply chain. The other area that we help customers in is to simplify demonstrating compliance, your compliance posture. That's with things like real-time notification and alerting, and this is an area that we're using a lot of AI and ML in as well. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Neil. And I think, yeah, it sort of starts to set out, I think, the range of opportunities that exist across, the Philippines and Thailand. So thank you very much for our introductions, and really grateful to have all three of you on our session today. So maybe turning to our kind of Thai and Filipino colleagues. I mean, just having a think about some of the things that you've presented on today. Is there one particular initiative or a particular subsector that you'd like to highlight that UK companies should really think about? Obviously, you presented such a wealth of information. I'm just trying to think of what's the one thing that we should really be signposting the UK towards coming up, this year. Deputy Governor?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Francesca. Yeah, actually, we'd like to highlight that since the central bank has already issued enabling regulations, there are actually a lot of opportunities for tech companies to provide services or solutions to not just the banks or the other supervised institutions of the BSP, but even for the small and medium enterprises. So the area of, as I have presented on the open finance also, since it's new to the Philippines, and as I mentioned, we're actually forming the oversight committee to look into the activities of this and provide oversight and governance for the open finance. So that particular committee. So there are a lot of opportunities there, as well as I've mentioned, the area on financial inclusion, given that there's still a lot of Filipinos to really be onboarded to the formal financial system. So solutions that can help these underserved as well as the unserved market segments to be onboarded to the financial system. I think I'll stop there for now.
Okay, for Thailand case, I think it's interesting for the UK-based corporations or any other countries' corporation to penetrate into the investment part, because in Thailand, our infrastructure for digital payment is quite good, in the sense that we have PromptPay, we are about to have the retail CBDC, and if you ask about the digital lending, unfortunately, I think foreigners cannot compete quite well with local players. For example, just yesterday, the largest bank announced the deal to cooperate with the largest telco. I mean, Siam Commercial Bank and AES to jointly do the digital lending. So that's why, based on the experience and expertise of UK-based financial institutions, I think you guys should focus more on the investment industry in Thailand. And the opportunity is that because although we have right now 2 million of unique investors in stock, plus another 1.4 million of unique investors in a digital asset, if we combine together without any intersection, we are talking about 3.4 million of investors. That's less than 5% of our population of 70 million. So I could see a lot of growth in the wealth tech. I mean, specifically for the stocks, funds, and digital assets. So that's what I'm looking for. The challenge, I could see that everyone, including domestic and foreign player, to deal with is that how do we manage the cost? Okay, for example, the marketing cost of acquisition or customer acquisition cost, as well as the operational cost. For example, I talked about national identity, right? We have to pay around 200 baht, okay, for each new account opening to the bank. And if we talk about the robo-advisor or mutual fund investment, this 200 baht is a big figure that we need to spend months or years in order just to break even. So that's the opportunity and the challenge that we are experiencing.
No, I think that's a really interesting point, and hopefully those on the call are thinking about how they can align best with the suggestions that you've provided today. I mean, just I guess building on that a little bit, and I just wanted to thank a couple of colleagues from the Bank of Thailand who are in our Q&A plugging away alongside the Deputy Governor. So I do want to just highlight Kunpinyo and Kun Achari. Kunpinyo is the Director of Information System Examination Department, so covering cybersecurity, and is kindly answering some questions there. And also Kun Achari as the Director of Fintech Department as well. So just to kind of pick up some of the things that we've spoken about today already, I mean, maybe thinking about the broader doing business picture. I'd be intrigued to see maybe from all of our panelists, maybe starting with our UK fintech and cyber firms. Do you have any sort of tips as to how you've approached the markets, Thailand?
I think the logical place,
or how to approach. Go on.
And I was just going to say, I think one of the logical places for me really is DIT, who've been phenomenally supportive and helpful to us, not just in Thailand and the Philippines, but across the region as well. So I would recommend everyone to be trying to access the wealth of resources that you folks have. And I think more broadly, doing business across the region, it's having a regional presence in a country is significant, and also trying to being aware of the benefit of having a distinct customer in each territory, to help to de-risk some of the perceived challenges of using a solution in that country.
Yeah, Francesca, I would add to what John's saying. I think the relationship with DIT is very, very important for us. It does give us a channel to engage more locally as well. We have a presence in Thailand and also in the Philippines and across Southeast Asia. One of the things that I strongly feel is really important is building partnerships with technology vendors, like ourselves and the panel that we've got on today, and giving access to you to use the technology and to do sandboxing. It was mentioned earlier. I think it's very, very key to looking at the different models that we could look at in our new world as we go into reinventing ourselves both in Thailand and in the Philippines. We see that there'll be new industries that will come out of COVID as we come out of this, and we want to be better prepared to offer some more resiliency around businesses that come up through fintech.
Sure.
I think the biggest lesson for us kind of working in the region and across Thailand and the Philippines has been people they like to talk to locals. Locals like to talk to one another. So one of the things I'm really proud of is the fact that we've just made our first Thai hire to help address that particular market. And definitely every single market has its own nuances, and particularly across ASEAN, you have a lot of it's quite fragmented in terms of how people address all sorts of things when it comes to negotiation. But equally, we were talking about GDPR earlier. Everyone's got their own little kind of, twist on data localization laws. And so actually for us, it's been really critical to have local partners. But then equally, actually, I would say that what the pandemic has kind of accelerated is, I'm a huge advocate for having people that are local on the ground that can contact your customers. It increases the accountability, and definitely from a customer experience perspective, which is something that Featurespace has really kind of taken on to differentiate ourselves in the market. It's something that we get a lot of feedback that people like to see.
Yeah, no, thank you. And just to say thanks for mentioning DIT, we obviously really appreciate that. So perhaps, Deputy Governor, do you have any reflections on how companies should be thinking about tackling the Philippines market?
Yeah. Actually, our goal really is to enable, as I mentioned, a conducive environment for both the incumbent banks and our supervised institutions and fintechs to harness actually their full potential with regard to journey of their journey of innovation. So our regulatory approach to fintech is shaped by three principles. So we ensure that regulation is proportionate and fair, and we maintain multi-stakeholder collaboration, and also, of course, ensure consumer protection. So we are confident that digital innovation can coexist alongside the central bank's key mandates of maintaining monetary, financial stability, and of course, the efficiency and safety of payments and settlement systems. And we will continue to support financial products and services that are suitably designed, priced, and tailored to diverse market segments, including the unbanked and underserved markets. And that's through, of course, pioneering delivery channels. So, also, with regards to how the business can really effectively set up shop here in the Philippines is that we have our the central bank has our service pledge, and that we have established the Citizens Charter, which covers a list of our services to both the applicants as well as the supervised institutions, documenting the detailed list and procedures for registration and other activities, including the committed timelines applicable to that. So we want to be of service, of course, to the public on banking days during office hours, with authorized, properly identified personnel providing continuous, prompt, efficient, and courteous assistance, and then to satisfy the requirements of the clients, including those with special needs, while within our premises, and also to provide active feedback and redress mechanism to any of the available channels, with an assurance of a reply of our action within 5 banking days from the time we are notified of there is any concern or complaint. Thank you.
Great. No, thank you, and it's really good to hear that you're kind of open to engaging with the UK fintechs that would like to come along, and I might come back to that point in a second. I'll let Chonladet quickly share his thoughts.
Hi, Francesca, can you repeat the question again?
So doing business in Thailand, what's your top tip?
Okay, as mentioned, I think to do business in Thailand, especially for fintech, the wealth tech industry is attractive, and I think we don't have to do everything from ground zero. I think we can offer the partnership with either incumbents or fintechs, and we can have the local players, local partners to clear everything, especially with the regulators. So we can utilize what we have with the least of marginal cost. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And then, sorry, just to build on that a little bit further. So, we have fintechs in the room here today. We've also got fintechs on the panel. What are your, and I'll also invite Kanpinyo and Kamachari to say, or to chip in if they have views, but in terms of sort of how, next steps for sort of fintechs, it sounds like you're quite open to being approached by them. Is there a particular initiative or a way that they should consider kind of first steps for market entry? I don't know if also the UK fintechs on the panel would like to share sort of their first thing or what they considered and how they kind of took that first step. Maybe start with Chonladet and the Thai colleagues if they'd like to kick off. I don't know if Kanachari can, yes, perfect.
Hi, sure. Thank you, Francesca. And just to add on to Kun Cholade's point, I believe that regulators in Thailand, not just the BOT, but the SEC and the OIC as well, are very open, at least for discussion with colleagues from both Thailand and international players. So definitely, if there's anything or any opportunity or questions that we can clarify for you guys, and definitely just give us a call or let us know, and we will definitely help provide information for you. And of course, I talk with Kun Cholade quite often recently, because one of the priorities of the Fintech Association is to explore more opportunities to partner with international players. So definitely that would be something that the regulator would help support as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Deputy Governor, I assume, do you have anything to add on what you shared earlier?
Actually, we want to continue actually to champion initiatives promoting, of course, responsible innovation in the delivery of financial products and services. So all stakeholders must join the journey of transformation into an economy that is characterized by a robust, secure, and resilient digital infrastructure with tech-savvy consumers and an innovation-embracing public sector. So for us, digital is no longer a matter of convenience, but it has, in fact, become a matter already of necessity. So the current pandemic has clearly emphasized the need to democratize access to financial services and address exclusion. So especially benefiting those most hit by the pandemic's effects on the economy.
Thanks. How about our fintechs? What's your first step recommendation? And cybersecurity.
I think it kind of builds on a point Siobhan made earlier. ASEAN is much less homogeneous than perhaps you would have in somewhere like the EU. So you're going to have 22 different sets of regulations across 22 different countries, particularly in that privacy area that we were kind of touching on earlier, which may have a lot of similarity with GDPR, but they're not going to exactly overlay. But in terms of expanding into the region, I think DIT, great place to start. Understanding that there are those nuances, very much more a relationship-based region, I would say, to build on Siobhan's point earlier about having boots on the ground. So, trying to find a local partner as you look to expand into a region, and whether that's something you can do yourself or through fellow fintech recommendations or DIT, I think is a great place to start. And also looking to identify where you're going to look to expand out from in the region as well. I mean, you really do need to have a presence. It is, for me, very much more relationship driven, which has introduced obviously some greater challenges through COVID, but they haven't been insurmountable in terms of growing business, because I do think whilst there's a preference to have someone just down the road you can speak to, there's an understanding that that's not necessarily as feasible as perhaps it was a couple of years ago.
I think I think I just want to build on something as well that Miss Fonacia kind of spoke about, which was the fact that digitization creates this amazing opportunity to kind of overcome financial exclusion and actually increase inclusion. And so I would I definitely agree with John in the fact that actually those on the ground relationships are really key. But what I think is really exciting in terms of fintech and in terms of different technologies is the fact that every day we're getting better at what we're doing. We're getting quicker at delivering our software, we're productizing it, and that's kind of across the board. You know, fintech is now becoming a much more mature sphere. And so what that means is that when we look at markets like Southeast Asia, where let's be frank, like a lot of markets, the price points are different to what, you know, a lot of the British companies are seeing in, say, Europe and in North America. Actually, we can now start, through this productization, offering best-in-class products at competitive prices and really helping to drive these initiatives that governments are really wanting to spearhead in terms of enhancing financial inclusion. So I think there's definitely the relationships aspect, but then there's definitely also making sure that you know that your product is aligned to the market that you're going after.
Yeah, I think product and team is always going to be critical to the success of any fintech. I mean, if you don't have a strong product, you're not going to survive in any market. And I think Southeast Asia is very much the same. And I do think, you know, it kind of builds on something we touched on earlier, which is that, you know, you have large, distinct financial institutions in most of the ASEAN nations as well, which, you know, offers perhaps a greater opportunity. There is, there are some large regional players, but domestically you have large institutions that you can focus on and target. And, you know, somewhere like the Philippines, you know, you also have a large unbanked population, as the Deputy Governor points out. It's a huge opportunity for dynamic companies to recognise that opportunity. And look to leverage the sort of success that you saw with the likes of Grab and Gojek in Indonesia, in terms of providing that payment mechanism, and where, you know, what are effectively ride-hail companies have become financial institutions on the back of, you know, being trusted fintech providers.
And John, I think it's also about embedding security early on in the products as well, and addressing risk. And I think the easier we make it for fintech companies to adopt security early on and do more security testing, for example, and having a very clear view of how the data is going to be utilized later on, you know, especially around data monetization. As we become more and more digital, and our identities are easily accessible, I think that's going to be quite key as well. I know we've talked a lot about data privacy, but I think around CIM space, that's going to be quite key as well to reduce risk.
Yeah, there's some pretty aggressive penalties in this part of the world if you get it wrong as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And actually, to that point, I mean, one of the things that we're seeing is that, I mean, even if you look at, so Visa has a risk conference every year that you can sign up to for free. I'd recommend it. It's very informative. But I mean, even when, you know, they show you the transaction volumes that are occurring. And I think there's a strong lesson to be learned from the UK, where actually a lot of the challenger fintechs actually went and put in security solutions early on, a little bit how Neil's describing that. And that meant that actually that opened up their engineering teams to being able to focus on bringing new products to market and ensuring that they could actually reach profitability faster. And I think that actually that's a really good point, Neil, that you've made, that actually, you know, investing in security solutions and getting that right from the first stage is actually really important, because then it's, you know, strong tick box, great for customer experience, but actually it then allows you to concentrate on making sure you're continuing to, you know, to bring the best in class experience to your consumer base.
It also helps
I think,
understand. Sorry, John.
Thank you. I was just going to say, I think an extension of that is, you know, architecting your solution well from the outset as well. So understanding what you need to be doing, understanding the risks that you have as an organization, and assuming that you're going to be successful and that you are going to be big. You know, part of what you bring as a differentiator is your agility. So making sure that you understand, you know, the connectivity of your data, understanding how it all interplays, how your systems will interact, so that when you build on top, you understand the relationships between them, so that you can reduce those risks and maximize that success, and not introduce the challenges that the legacy players have in your markets.
I think, you know, bringing security on early on also helps us improve the maturity of regulation and governance as well, you know, because it really gives us an idea of where the gaps are. So it's fulfilling in that way as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for kind of talking us through how you're thinking about it. I mean, the very last question that I think I ask every single time, and Deputy Governor Chuchi is going to be again, but ESG and the kind of the impact obviously on Southeast Asia is crucial, and we're gearing up to COP26. Obviously, really excited about it. I mean, how obviously Deputy Governor's talked about it a little bit, how they're looking to embed the kind of sustainable economy and the digital and how it all embeds in together. Chonladette spoke a little bit about it as well. I mean, does anyone have anything they'd like to add in terms of how they see the kind of sustainable fintech cyber agenda all coming together? Maybe it's a value add or kind of a priority focus. It's kind of an open to the floor if anyone would like to say anything about it.
One thing I would say from our perspective is that it's very much at its heart a data problem as much as it's very much a data problem in terms of understanding impact, in terms of understanding how to address impact, in terms of ensuring your reporting metrics are correct and that you can engage in the optimal fashion. You need to understand the data you have in your organization and to leverage that data to achieve those goals in any of the areas of ESG. So, perhaps we look at it through a slightly biased lens, but for us, it's very much a data governance problem. At least from a fintech angle.
Okay, for Thailand, I think based on what we have seen, the wealth inequality is a huge problem here, especially after the COVID. So anything that the private and public sector could do to reduce the gap between the billionaire and the typical people, we would love to do that. And on the fintech side, we are talking in terms of the innovation to close that wealth gap or wealth inequality.
Yeah, for us in the Philippines as well, I think there's really a huge opportunity for solutions to help process or generate and even evaluate the ESG data that can be used for sustainability matters for banks and other institutions. So I think there's huge opportunity there. And as these are being processed and already put into good use, then that information will really help investors, of course, when they make decisions. This is as far as technology and sustainability can really be merged to come up with something really good for investments.
Yeah, thanks. No, I totally agree, and really appreciate your views on that as well. I mean, just I think we sort of need to wrap up the session, but I do just want to say a massive thank you to everyone, all of our panelists who've shared today, and also our colleagues from the Bank of Thailand who've kindly fed in on the chat as well. So thank you very much. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say before we wrap up from that side? Otherwise, I'll be handing over to our the country directors, the IKT country directors for Thailand and the Philippines. So Richard Colley and then Ben Morley. Would you like to say a few kind of closing thoughts?
Thanks, Francesca. Magandang Hapon, good afternoon from the Philippines. I hope everyone's enjoyed this afternoon. I'm Richard Colley. I'm Director of Trade and Investment at the British Embassy in Manila. Thanks everyone for joining. I think you'll agree the presentations and discussion this afternoon have been really informative. And I hope everyone goes away having learned a lot this afternoon. Just another couple of thanks, an important thanks, particularly to the UK-ASEAN for partnering with us again on this event. Thanks, Veronica and Ken. And also to our speakers who shared their expertise and insights around fintech and cybersecurity opportunities this afternoon. Particular thanks from me with responsibility for the Philippines to Deputy Governor Chuchi Fanacia of the Banco Central, who has always been very supportive of our trade promotion efforts in the banking sector. So it's great to see you again, and thanks for helping. Also great to hear from the UK companies Featurespace, Solidatus and Microfocus for the panel discussion. Really interesting. I just say that, I hope the discussion really does prompt some thoughts, and particularly for the UK attendees, that you go away sort of enthused and encouraged to explore the Philippines and Thai markets further. My team, myself, we stand ready to assist. Emma Lester and Angelique Lyrag, who are on the call today, are our tech experts and very happy to help, and have helped some of the companies speaking here today. We'll share contact details, but would be very pleased to connect you with relevant Philippine organisations, give you advice and guidance on how to navigate the market. As we heard from the Deputy Governor, digital payments and finance in the Philippines is really growing across electronic transfers, mobile banking, digital merchant payments. And we also heard about the digital transformation of the financial sector, including some really exciting national initiatives. And the Philippines' own targets for the next couple of years, and to see the increase of these services. And ultimately, the goal really is about inclusive digital finance. So a great presentation. Thank you for that, Deputy Governor. And aligned to that, you know, as Philippine banks embrace digital transformation, transactions grow, the demand for cybersecurity really is apparent too. And again, we heard how the Banco Central is building awareness and improving the environment for cybersecurity management. More widely, total tech spending in the Philippines last year reached £6 billion and is projected to grow 10 to 12% annually for the next 3 years. And according to global data, 84% of Philippine enterprises increased their tech budgets in 2020 compared to 66% in 2019. And I think those figures just really demonstrate how companies are accelerating their digital strategies in the new environment. So this really is a market that's worth your consideration, and I'd suggest now's the time to look at it. So do get in touch, let us know what we can do, and we stand ready to assist. With that, I'd like to hand you over to my good colleague, Ben Morley, Country Director for DIT Thailand, for some final words. Over to you, Ben.
Thank you very much, Richard. And it's always a good challenge to go last in one of these sort of excellent discussion sessions and try and wrap things up. I'll try and do it in 2 minutes. But firstly, Sawadee Krap from Thailand. And I would really like to thank our keynote speaker, Kun Chonladet, from the President of the Thai Fintech Association. And of course, our representatives from the Bank of Thailand, Kun Pinyo and Kun Achari. Thank you very much for your participation, and thank you to all the organisers. We've heard how, you know, the pandemic has really transformed the world that we live in, and we've seen that in digital services, fintech becoming much more important in the last sort of 24 months, and the speed of transition has been really accelerated. I've heard of big companies undertaking 10-year transitions in IT and digital within the space of a few months to enable home working and access. And I think that transformation was really, I think, produced great benefits, but also produced great risks. And I love the model that Kun Chonladet posed in terms of the .com to .coin boom. I thought that was a great comparison, and showing how the market is starting to mature and consolidate, and there will be winners and losers in that sort of battle, and the survival of certain products and companies that come to the fore with great opportunities for the future. We saw big opportunities around data monetization, financial inclusion, wealth and investment. And I think underpinning that, 2 thoughts from me. Firstly, those big solutions require solutions for authentication, for identity and for security. And we heard about the need for partnering and the need for sandboxes and the need for sort of local talent as well, and the value of that in enabling those sort of business transactions to happen, but also the importance of product, the importance of the architecture that underpins your products as well. And the other layer to this is, of course, the maturity alongside the market of the regulation, the compliance, the processes that are needed. And I think that's where there's some great opportunities for sort of government-to-government engagement. And I'm really pleased to say that the UK has a strong sort of track record on this with Thailand. We have long-standing cooperation on financial services and ongoing programs of work in areas such as green finance and accounting standards. And we're also moving to sort of a new era of this with an upcoming JETCO, of which underneath that JETCO there'll be 2 subcommittees, one on digital technology and one actually on financial services as well. And we really encourage UK and Thai companies to work with us and to come to us with sort of opportunities, challenges that you're having, that perhaps we can look at to mature through that JETCO and that kind of government to government level engagement. So finally, like Richard, I offer the support of DIT in Bangkok to UK business and to Thai companies to find opportunities in the UK for partners. My thanks to John, Neil and Siobhan for the big shout outs earlier, and the big sort of thanks to them for their participation today. Final thing, please do get in touch with myself or our tech lead, Kun Mataros, or May, who is on the call right now, and we stand ready to help you. So finally for me, Kap Kun Krap, thank you for your time today. This has been really informative, really valuable, and a really useful session. Back to you, Francesca.
Here, Ben, and yeah, thank you very much again to all of our speakers today. So I think you've really clearly set out the opportunity in Thailand and the Philippines. We're really happy to support you, and please come back tomorrow where we're holding a session focused on Malaysia, Indonesia and Vietnam. So we really do see these 5 markets in particular. I mean, of course, across all of ASEAN, there's a lot of opportunity, but we are really focused on these particular markets, and we think there's a huge opportunity going forward. So do come to us with any questions, any thoughts, any queries, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.